you ever wonder whether the UK theme park industry is getting better, or if we've had peak theme park? Let's find out. Okay guys, I decided I want to find out which decade has been the best decade for us in the UK when it comes to theme parks. I'm going to go back as far as the 80s. I was born in 81, so we'll look at the 80s, the 90s, the noughties, the 10s and the 20s, that's what they're called. We're going to look through some notable rides, and then we're going to break it down into different categories. How many Woodies there were, how many steel coasters there were, how many kiddie coasters, how many family coasters, how many thrill coasters, and how many inversions, and see which decade gave us the best coasters. Okay, so starting with the 80s, there's some very notable rides in the 80s. We have the corkscrew at Alton Towers, which, you know, a Vekoma looper that put Alton Towers on the map. Before that, Alton Towers wasn't as well known. It was their first major ride. It's obviously a very iconic ride. It's got a lot of enthusiasts that still miss it and like it. I was fortunate enough to ride that. Put a stupid picture of me on it on screen. And the iconic corkscrew itself is still outside the park to this day. You know, so it's part of Alton Towers heritage. In addition to that, a couple of years later, we then got the Black Hole in Alton Towers, and then we got other rides such as Avalanche and Blackpool Pleasure Beach, which is the only bobsled ride in the UK to this day. Before I run the numbers, I just want to say one thing, little disclaimer, all the numbers here are from RCDB. Bizarrely, when I added these up, the total number of rides and the total in each category don't match. They're out by one or two. And there is some duplicates in here, so for example Traumatizer, which got relocated to Infusion at Blackpool Pleasure Beach, is in RCDB twice, so just a couple of caveats. What does that mean if we break it down by numbers? Well, in the 80s we got 1 Woody, we got 58 steel coasters, we got 1 kiddie coaster, 19 family coasters, 36 thrill rides, and a total of 26 inversions. Moving on to the 90s. So the 90s had quite a lot in this decade. We got Nemesis, which was the first suspended coaster from B&M in the UK. We also had the big one, which was and is the UK's tallest roller coaster for now. That'll be changing next year with Project Exodus, but it is currently the tallest ride, and it's a aerodynamics classic. A ride that is currently being retracked piece by piece each year by Blackpool Pleasure Beach to preserve its history and keep it going for many years to come. In addition to that, we also got Shockwave, which is the only UK standing coaster, and we also got Oblivion, which is the world's first vertical drop coaster, although it wasn't technically vertical, but Alton Towers marketing, yeah. So what does that mean for the numbers? Well, from the 90s we had 3 Woodies, we had 79 steel coasters, 9 kiddie coasters, 27 family coasters, 41 thrill coasters, and a total of 34 inversions. Moving on to the noughties. So in the noughties we got Colossus, which was the world's first 10 inversion coaster, which I still haven't ridden. I'm annoyed. I've been to Thorpe Park twice. First time it was closed for maintenance, second time it was in pieces. I've still not been on that. Then we also got Air, which is now Galactica, which wasn't quite the first flying coaster in the UK. That accolade goes to a little known ride called Skytrack that was in Granada Studios, which I also managed to get on back in the 90s. We also had Rita, so you know, a launch coaster for the UK, and Mumbo Jumbo, which at the time was the world's steepest coaster when it opened at 112 degrees. That's since been beaten, but still a fun little ride at Flamingo Land. In terms of the numbers from the noughties, you had 2 Woodies, 126 steel coasters, 10 kiddie coasters, 59 family coasters, 54 thrill rides, and a total of 55 inversions. Moving on to the next decade, we've got the tens, the teens, the next decade. We've got a few notable rides here. We had 13, which was the UK's first drop track, a ride that Alton Towers marketing made out to be super eerie and creepy. I'm pretty sure at one point there was rumours you would have to sign a disclaimer to ride this, and the ride isn't creepy at all. In fact, the queue line's more creepy than the ride itself. We also got Hero. Just why? Why is that a thing? The Smiler. Still to this day, the world's most inversions on a coaster at 14. Nobody's beat that yet. A couple other notable rides. We got Icon at Blackpool Pleasure Beach, a dual launch coaster for the UK. Still one of my favourites. And we also got Wicker Man, which is also Alton Towers' first Woody and only Woody, and it's just a great ride. In terms of numbers for this decade, we had one Woody, Wicker Man, we had 104 steel coasters, 14 kiddie coasters, 50 family coasters, 33 thrill coasters, and a total of 22 inversions. And if we move on to the final decade, the decade we're in right now, I've taken all the numbers. We can see up to 2024, so we can see the first 5 years of this decade. I've just doubled all the numbers to guess what it's going to be for the full decade. So this may be slightly inaccurate, but in terms of notable rides, we've obviously got Project Exodus launching next year, which will take the crown of the tallest ride in the UK. A Mack coaster that I'm kind of keen to get on when it comes. We also got Sick, that was last year, which is the only, so it should be the same as Colossus, which I just said I've never ridden, but it's got lap bars and it's a lot smoother. Great ride, really enjoy that ride. Interestingly, it was a ride that's the second park it's been at, although it's the first time it's been constructed. It came from Brazil, was never built, and then obviously Flamingo Land bought it. And then next week we've got, or this week, next week? Soon, we've got Mandrill Mayhem, which is Chessington's first inversion. It's also, as far as I'm aware, B&M's first shuttle wing coaster, and it's the UK's second wing coaster. In terms of numbers for this decade, again, bearing in mind all these numbers are twice what they are because I've extrapolated. No Woodies, that's kind of depressing. 122 steel coasters, 28 kiddie coasters, 60 family coasters, 33 thrill rides, and 26 inversions. So what does that actually mean? What if I want to say what the best decade was? Are we getting better? Are we getting worse? What do all these numbers actually mean? Well, realistically, it depends on what you class as the most important thing in a park. If you are a fan of Woodies, then the 90s was the decade for you. It's definitely where we had the most, and as you can see, there's none currently in the pipeline for this decade. It doesn't mean they're dying. It feels like there's more of a trend. If we're going to get a Woody, it would be like an RMC, so a hybrid. We don't have any of those in the UK yet. If steel coasters is your thing, the most coasters that were put in was in the noughties. If you're a young family and you want kiddie coasters, then this is the decade for you. This is the most kiddie coasters that have been installed. If you want family coasters, again, the 20s, we are putting more and more kiddie and family rides into parks. If thrills was your thing, then the noughties is the decade for you. If you wanted inversions, again, the noughties is the one for you. And I also put a poll up on my channel, and you guys resoundingly said that the 90s was the decade that you all preferred. Probably because it had the year of the coaster. 94, we got the big one, we got Nemesis, we got Shockwave. It was an important year in the UK theme park industry. I think it's interesting to see there's definitely a trend in the UK to move more to family orientated. You can see that things like Lightwater Valley have pretty much taken all their thrills out. They've just rebranded and gone down that road. You look at the numbers, it's family coasters, it's kiddie coasters. It's not to say the thrill market in the UK has died. They're still getting rides such as Project Exodus. We still don't know what Project Horizon is at Alton Towers. Will it be a thrilling coaster, a family coaster? Don't know. But yeah, there's definitely a shift in the market, in the UK at least, to go away from thrill and go more family friendly. So yeah, what's your thoughts? What's your favourite decade? Of all of these, what rides have I mentioned that you particularly enjoy or miss, because some of them may not still be there? Yeah, just let me know your comments down below. Like and subscribe. I've been Chris, you've been watching Coaster Dad, and I will see you in the next one. Adios.